Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week's video is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, and finally I'm going to get around to it here. I want to try to make a bowl with some pine cones. So I've got some pine cones here which I dried down to 0% moisture content, and don't dry these in your kitchen oven because they surprisingly don't smell that good when they dry. You would think it would just been kind of a pine smell, but they don't smell good at all. So I won't do that again. Anyhow, I dried them down to 0% moisture, stabilized them in cactus juice resin, and I'm going to cast them upside down. And the risk that I run, of course, is that when you do that, you could get air bubbles trapped up in each one of these little petals, or whatever you call them, of the pine cone. I'm hoping that it's not going to be an issue, but because of the shape of the bowl, if we put them in this way, the bowl's obviously smaller at the bottom, bigger at the top, and the pine cone's small at the bottom, big at the top. So if I put them around the outside edge of the bowl this way, I'm kind of hoping that I get a really nice design around the bowl. So I'll just set these aside for a second. So what I've done, here's my mold here. I filled it with rice. I'm going to use this bowl on the inside just to prevent from pouring all of this full of resin and turning it all away. I'm going to dump this rice over into another container and see what kind of volume that I need. It's significant, I know. So this tub is 4 liters. Try and get this in here without spilling too much of it. Okay, so it's going to take a little more than 4 liters, I think. Not a lot more though. Now I didn't put the pine cones in, and they will take up some volume. Yeah, I think I can get away with 4 liters actually. That should work out. By the time I get the pine cones in there, they'll take up a little tiny bit of space. Hopefully I had that yellow bowl pushed down far enough that the wall thickness would allow for the pine cones. Where I'll run into a problem is if the pine cones were thicker than that and I have to have more resin. But this resin has quite a long setup time, so I have time. If I have to mix some more, I can. I've got 40 minutes. Here I'm just placing the pine cones in the bowl, and I'm fixing them at the top with a spot of hot melt glue. And this took a fairly long time, actually about a half an hour by the time you held them in until they were the glue hardened enough that you could let go and get to the next one. Okay, so I've got these glued in except for one, which I don't really have a pedal up here that I can get to set on the edge of the bowl good like the rest of them. Pine cones all have a bit of a curl, so I put the curl of the pine cone to match the contour of the bowl. I couldn't get the yellow bowl to fit in between the pine cones properly, so I switched over to this smaller bowl, and it fits in much better. So I'm going to actually have to mix a full kit of 6 liters of this Red Creek Wood Design thick pour. I'm going to pour the whole. Mix the whole 6. Which is easy because it's just 2 to 1. So there's two part A to go with the 1 part B, and I'll just mix the entire thing in a big bowl. And I'm going to color this the same as I did a couple of weeks ago, and I've done this color many times. It's extremely popular. I had some friends who suggested copper, which probably would look really nice, but this is going to be specifically for someone who asked for green. So I'm going to do the green and see how it works out. I'll set this aside for now. I'll put some weights in this. This should not be messy at all. Now this actually looks like it's dirty, but it's not. This is some stuff that's stuck on the side of this, which isn't going anywhere. And obviously I have way more resin than I need because this bowl is as big as this bowl volume-wise, and it's full. So, but again, I don't know how much space those pine cones are going to take up because I've never used them before. Red Creek Wood Design's been kind enough to supply the resin for the past few projects that I've done here, with the intention that I would experiment with it and see if it was suitable for turners for deep castings. So I did actually use between 5 and 5.5 liters in this pour. What I had left over of those 6 liters fit in that yogurt container that's just to the right of the yellow bowl in the background. So it's in between 5 and 5.5 liters. There were no signs of thermal cracks in this whatsoever, so I have no issue recommending this to other turners for deep pours. We're going to go with forest green in this one. Spruce green in this one. Equal amount. Pewter in the last one, the smaller one. Not as much pewter because it's an accent color. I don't want it to be predominant. If you'd like to try this resin out, there's a link and a discount code in the description. It's TKC 10%, so you'll get an extra 10% off. I don't get any kickback out of that. That's just to benefit folks who'd like to give it a try. So I've got my pressure pot all ready to go. Compressor's all charged up. Now we just have to pour this. And this little guy right here is the only wild card. I just hope that he will stay in spot. I am going to put a weight in this right now. Put a couple weights in it right now. Where'd my loose guy go? There, that should keep everything down where we want it. Okay, I'm going to put this in the pressure pot now, and I'm going to top it up in the pressure pot, although it's pretty full, but I'm not going to carry it any fuller than that. Alright, so I was going to show demolding this, but when it came out, it was shrunk back off of the bowl a little bit, which is great. I was kind of concerned because I wasn't able to put mold releasing, because I needed to keep the hot melt glue attached to the sides to keep the pine cones in position. So it came out really easy. It basically dumped out. It is very heavy, and I've got a little indent here, and there isn't an indent in the bottom. This is kind of funky how that went, but I was considering how I was going to mount this, and I thought for a while that I might try and put it in between centers and turn a tenon on the bottom, but it's quite heavy, so I don't think I'll do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my big faceplate out, and I'm going to hot melt glue it. I'm going to sand the cones off where they're proud of the lip of the bowl, and I'm going to hot melt glue it to a faceplate. I'll put a center in the bottom, and I'll turn a mortise on it. So this weighs 5.15 kilograms, which is 12 pounds about, or more. So it's pretty heavy. Anyhow, I'm going to sand these off on my disc grinder or my horizontal belt sander, one of the two. I think I'll use that, and get it flush, and then I'm going to center this up on a faceplate. Okay, so I got this, I got the cone sanded off flush to the rim again, and I like the color, I like the contrast of the color in the green, so I think it's going to turn out pretty good. My hope was that I wouldn't get the centers of the cones in the turning, just get the fins or the petals, whatever you want to call them, on the outside. But looking at this, I don't think it's going to matter. It's all going to be pretty much the same color, and should be pretty interesting. So we'll get it glued up here. I'm just going to center it up on this faceplate, put a good bead of hot melt glue around, and I'll bring it back when it's on the lathe. Alright, so I've got this fairly well in balance, actually, considering that it wasn't round to start with. Anytime you cast one of these things in one of those bowls, the bowl walls flex a little bit and they get a little bit around. You can see some of the pine cone poking through here. So I'm not going to have to go crazy deep to get into where I want to get a nice bit of pine cone in the outside. So all I'm going to do, I've got it on here, as you can see, with a big bead of hot melt glue all the way around. I took no chances with this because it is very heavy. So I'm just going to true up this outside. I'm going to cut a mortise in the bottom for my 4-jaw chuck, and then we'll get it flipped around, and we'll do the rest of the work on the 4-jaw chuck. So I'm going to have my face shield on and my mask on, so there'll be no commentary while I'm turning this resin. So you notice I make a lot of light passes over top of this and then clean them back up again. It's sort of a combination between getting the right shape that looks good and getting the right amount of pine cone exposed. So I sanded up the bottom and I finished it up using Yorkshire grit regular microfine, and I put Hampshire Sheen high gloss in the mortise. I just want to get that base done so that when I put it in the 4-jaw chuck it would be completely finished. I don't have to go back to it again. The bowl that I used in the center of the mold to keep from having to pour this full of resin wasn't exactly in the center, so it's a little bit off balance, and that's keeping me from getting my speed up. So I'm just truing the inside up here. So I got a shape that I like now, and I like the amount of pine cone that's sticking through. So I'm going to just clean it up and take a quick peek at it one last time, and then I'm going to sand it up to 320. I'll bring it back when I'm ready for some sanding sealer. I've got this sanded up to 320 now. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see the detail on this in this resin. This is kind of what I hoped would happen. So my goal was to get just the petals of the pine cones in and not get the body, and I think I'm going to be okay. From the looks of the inside, it's in about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and so I think I'm going to be able to cut all those cores out. I've never made anything out of pine cones before this way, and so I'm going to keep looking at it as I hollow out the center, and I'll show you as I go, to kind of give you the different looks, whether it's just the tips of the petals or the cores of the pine cones or whatever. We'll take a peek at it, you know, at different stages going through. But what I was really hoping would happen is that the resin colors would go around these little petals as it went down into the bowl, and that's exactly what it did. And I'm really pleased with how that turned out. One of my concerns, other than the placement of the pine cones, was that I was going to get some air bubbles up underneath of these petals because they were upside down and there was a chance for air to get trapped in them. But there is 0 air bubbles in this, and it is a completely solid casting, no flaws in the resin whatsoever. So I'm super happy about that. That Red Creek Wood Designs resin is very liquid. It's very viscous. So we got into all those little voids really nicely. Just going to wipe this down with some denatured alcohol for one more time. You can see the nice, it's been sanded up to 320. I'm going to put some Mylands sanding sealer on it as soon as this evaporates. Well, I forgot to zoom the camera back out there when I was putting on the sanding sealer, so I just wiped on with the cloth. Now I've got the Yorkshire grit regular on now, and I'm just working that in. That's good. All right, now I'm going to start hollowing out the center. I'll bring you around so you can see that. I'm going to leave the tailstock up because this is still an extremely heavy blank, and I don't want to leave too much stress on that 4-jaw chuck on its own and that mortise. So I will spin this around, or actually bring you around, and I'll leave the tailstock in until I get most of the inside hollowed out. Okay, pine cones are getting a little bigger lines in them now. That's actually pretty cool. All right, now we're starting to get into the cores of them, and that's still pretty cool. I don't so much care for this, but I do really like this, where it's wider. And I think we're going to get to that when we cross over to this other side. We are going to get a little bit wider pine cone leaves or fins or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what the right term for that is. I just wanted to back that tailstock out and just show you what that looks like with the centers of these cones. It's pretty nice too. Again, I don't know how hard that is, although it feels really hard. Again, they were stabilized, so it should be quite hard. But just want to keep looking at it on the way down to see if it's something that I want to try the next time I use these. And I may do that. All right, I'm going to sand this all up and I'll bring you back when I'm finishing the inside. Okay, good. Everything sanded up to 320. Got Yorkshire grit regular and a couple coats of microfine on it, so the inside now is all finished up. I'm just going to put some Hampshire Sheen high gloss on now. I'm pretty happy with the amount of pine cones that came through this. I like that look really well. That's sort of what I was shooting for. I got a little bit more of the centers in the very bottom than I thought I was going to, but this is exactly what I was wanting right here. All right, so I'm going to take this off and set up with the buffing wheel, and I'll show you a little bit of the buffing. So I buffed this with a triple E compound. Now I'm using white diamond. And if you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it very much. Thanks to everyone who subscribed to the channel. I also appreciate that a lot. If you like what you saw in this video and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Feel free to leave a comment, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let me know what you thought. And I will leave some stills up at the end, and we'll see you next time.